Welcome to the very first episode of the Blockcrunch, the podcast where we talk to investors, entrepreneurs, and builders in the blockchain space for 20 minutes. I'm your host for today, Jason Choi. And today I am incredibly excited to be talking to Adam Draper, the founder and managing director of Boost VC, one of the most active accelerators in the crypto space today. Adam is also a two-time entrepreneur and a fourth-generation venture capitalist, previously founding the company Expert Financial, a secondary market for private securities. Adam is also an early investor in Coinbase, which, as you probably know, is the largest wallet/exchange for the top cryptocurrencies in the market today. So I am incredibly grateful to be able to pick his brain on what it's like to be an early investor in the crypto space, as well as what he thinks are the best strategies to scale this entire blockchain ecosystem. Just a word of disclaimer before we start, none of the things we discuss in this podcast are meant to be construed as financial advice. So with that being said, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, or you can follow me on Twitter at Mr. Jason Choi to stay up to date with the latest episodes as well. So with that being said, let's buckle up and dive right into it.
This is this worldwide phenomenon.
Hey Adam, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fantastic.
So just to get us started, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you started Boost VC, as well as how you got into crypto in the first place?
I started a fintech company out of college called Expert Financial, where I made a lot of mistakes starting a company. Over 4.5 years, I found that I made so many mistakes that I was able to help people not make the same mistakes I did. And eventually I left and I ended up finding a lot of fulfillment from helping people to start businesses and start startups. And so mentoring in bulk is called an accelerator. And that led me to founding Boost VC, where we became the first Bitcoin related fund ever, and which eventually evolved into blockchain, which evolved into crypto. And we've been in the space for about 5 years. We've backed about 85 related crypto-related startups, like a lot of the ICOs or tokens like Aragon or Ripio or Filecoin that were backed by us. So we're very fortunate to be there. How I got involved in the crypto space was actually I have a very unique story. I was pitched by Brian Armstrong, the founder of Coinbase, and he said, basically we sat at a coffee shop and he said, I'm building a digital currency wallet. And I didn't know what that meant. And then he said, do you know what Bitcoin is? And then I said, I have no idea what Bitcoin is. And he presented this concept, which was at some point, the world is going to be on one financial infrastructure. He believed that infrastructure would be Bitcoin. And he was going to be the onboarding experience for this new financial economy. I started talking to people, and what you realize when you start talking to the crypto world is that they're all eccentric, they're all smart, and they're all like very dedicated and passionate contrarians, or at least that time they were all contrarians. It's feeling more like mainstream now. And they were all determined. They believed in this decentralized world. And so as I got hooked in like a magnet to this new world, Boost VC, I had started Boost VC after I ended up backing Coinbase, and I started Boost VC after backing Coinbase. And then about 6 months into starting Boost VC, we decided to differentiate ourselves by supporting this new ecosystem, and the new ecosystem was really called Bitcoin at the time. Now it's evolved.
Now, Adam, I'm curious as to why you choose to invest in what you call science fiction technologies or cutting-edge technologies, and what are the major differences between investing in a technology like blockchain versus other technologies?
Yeah, what's really interesting is that as a venture capitalist, we are backing the future leaders of the world. And the ones that are going to make the highest impact are going to be the ones that are using the latest technologies. And so that's why we focus on these sci-fi related technologies. Like we added VR a couple of years in as well. So we do crypto and VR. And so I look at it as like you have a better shot at winning and making the largest impact by using the latest technologies, and blockchain and crypto are the latest technology to be able to evolve. It's what I get really excitable off of is meeting a very passionate entrepreneur who wants to change the world. And that transcends technologies. That's just they evoke this curiosity in me that I want to be able to help and let run with the wind. And so like that's what I'm going for whenever I'm meeting with an entrepreneur. I'm like, is this person evoking this curiosity? And so what I look for in a crypto related startup or other is the same thing. All I'm looking for is like someone who evokes this curiosity of what the world is going to change, how the world is going to change with them in it. There are like, this is a new technology. There are like crypto. A lot of these things aren't companies; they're projects, and so there are new legal paradigms, new regulatory paradigms that we definitely have to deal with. But what makes my decision of like who we're going to be partnering with is much more about who the person is who's leading the way. And I just want to be swept up in the moment and, want to help them as much as I can.
Now, besides finding a founder who is a visionary and has charisma, as you mentioned just now, are there any other things or specific criteria that Boost looks for when investing in crypto startups? Or are you simply trying to find the best teams in the world to invest in?
We are 100%, I would say, people first. However, we do want the idea to be a good fit for where the market is today and in the future. We are very much focused more on infrastructure right now, I would say, than almost anything else. But we've all, we backed District OX, which is a sort of DApp to create these marketplaces on the Ethereum blockchain, and then I'm personally very interested in new governance mechanisms, and so we had Luis Quende, who founded Aragon, go through our program. And so we're finding more and more topics that we're excited about that we think can be decentralized. My general thought process is the first question that I think Bitcoin asked of the world was, what is money? And I think that it's very clear that everyone has a different answer to that, and that there might be a decentralized, out of government way in which you can generate money. And so that was the first question. I think the second question that's going to be asked is, what is government? So if they don't control our money, what should they control? And so suddenly it's going to be the government's working for us, not us working for the governments. And that's a very exciting change that could be happening. I think like, what right now, if you're starting a crypto related project, the first question that you should be asking yourself, if you're going to be dedicating the next 5 years of your life to this, is this something that needs to be decentralized? And I think more often than not, the answer is no, but it is all very, very exciting.
Now, Adam, we've talked a lot about the things that you see in a crypto startup that would make you want to invest in that startup. But I've also heard this saying that sometimes it's more important for an investor to come up with reasons to not invest in a startup. So I'm curious, are there specific things you see in a crypto startup that would make you turn down an investment opportunity in them?
It's the company that started as a company that's completely unrelated to crypto and is launching a token now because they think it'll be an easier way to fundraise. And I think that those will have a reckoning and they're not going to work out well. So we have sort of taken a stance, even if the company was somewhat okay, like launching a token not from the beginning is a very difficult thing to do. And the other thing that just to keep in mind is that I don't think we know what good is yet. In this marketplace. So like, what is a good crypto entrepreneur? We're not sure yet because it's so early. We're still in the first minute of the game of a very long game. And I think that over the next 12 months, 24 months, we'll start to see what that looks like and what a great token looks like and what that generates and how that works. Right now, it's Bitcoin and Ethereum, and those two are sort of like pulling the weight of the entire ecosystem.
Now, Adam, like you mentioned just now, Boots has invested in over 85 blockchain startups. So, for other investors out there, how can they get enough deal flow to get this big of a portfolio in an emerging space like this? What is your evaluation process like?
Yeah, so how we work is twice a year we run a 3-month program. So we programmatically invest in startups, believing that the network effects of companies growing together will be very strong for a strong foundation for a startup to build. And so I think the accelerator model is one of the more disruptive models to venture capital. And so what we do is we accept a lot of applications in a very specific amount of time. And then we review the applications and we filter it down based off of team and idea and what we're looking for. And then we have interviews. We're actually in the middle of interview week this week. So this is a very relevant question where we're sitting down with a lot of entrepreneurs and talking to them and trying to get to the core of what they're trying to solve. And that's always really fun. So we have a very programmed way to invest in startups. It's timed. It's specific timeframes. It's specific times, and we have a set deal and how we coach them through the 3 months that they're here. We provide housing, we provide office space, and we invest in the startup. So it's a very scalable model. It is different than a lot of venture firms, though.
You were also among the first investors ever to invest in Coinbase, which just reported over $1 billion in revenue last year. But when you invested, it was way before crypto was this popular. It was even before you bought a Bitcoin yourself. So what about that pitch? What about that investment opportunity appealed to you the most? And what made you make the decision to invest?
So the entire market cap of Bitcoin at that time, I believe it was either $100 million or $200 million. So we're looking at a crypto market cap today of like $600 billion. So it was a much different game then. So I think the thing that compelled me to invest in Brian is Brian. He had just left Airbnb, which was known to be a rocket ship company, to launch a company in a market that wasn't even valued at what Airbnb was. So the entire market size at that time, if it didn't grow, would have been a smaller market than what Airbnb is today or then, which is pretty wild that he sort of took this risk. So that risk-taking ability is pretty wild. The other part of it was he was a really great listener. And it's a very undervalued skill. I like entrepreneurs who really intake information well, and whether or not they use that information, they are absorbing it in order to create output. And they take it as one of the many inputs that they will get, and they'll pick and choose what they will end up taking on the advice side. And at that time when I invested in him, I was 26, like 25, 26. Taking advice from someone who's your age is, that's pretty wild. And they, and being like real, like he listened, it was like he was taking everything very, very seriously. I did have a background in fintech. Like I actually am very relevant to the ecosystem at large, but he was very patient and very understanding. And I think that sort of empathy for not only acquiring knowledge, but also listening to your customer, understanding the end user. And also he is a deep engineer. Like that's where he comes from. He got into this space because he thought it was the most curious software development in the last, 50 years. Those were the things that compelled me. It was really about him. And then when I was doing my diligence, every single person I met who was interested in Bitcoin was the most interested person I had ever met. Interesting and interested person I'd ever met in different ways. And so like that meant that there was sort of where there's smoke, there's fire. It's like, if this many brains are focused around one technology, there has to be something that will come of it.
On that note, as both an investor in the space and a fan of science fiction, what about a future of blockchain excites you the most?
Well, I think the wildest idea is that governments are going to start globally start to compete for citizens. So it's going to be about what regulation fits me, and the people of the world become more liquid. They'll be willing to be more of a nomadic species, and we're already a pretty nomadic species, honestly. And you're able to move to different jurisdictions so easily that all these governments are going to change their rules to make it more better for any citizens who live there, rather than really what's happening now is the governments are really saying, what can I get from my citizens? And that's the most interesting thing that I think this is a global experiment on, is these are rapidly, it's governance. Like all of these things are like, hey, could you have every citizen vote? Like on a blockchain, that's possible. And that's a governance related question. So this is the type of thing that I'm really, really excited and passionate about, is how society will change in relation to governments, and society will change in relation to you having the freedom of your own money. That's a big seismic shift that's about to happen in the world.
100% agree, and it's fascinating to see that general receptiveness to blockchain and things like e-citizenship are already implemented in places like Estonia, which is really exciting.
Completely, yeah. Estonia keep trying stuff. They have e-citizenship. They have a bunch of really interesting things. They're trying things a lot.
Absolutely. So just to close this off, I'm curious. I always ask this question at the end of my interviews, and it has to do with, what is one unusual habit that you have, or a weird thing that you love that you like to share right now?
So an unusual habit. So last year I created a morning routine that consists of, waking up. I write in a journal for 30 minutes. I then read for 30 minutes, and then I go through my calendar and I just figure out every question that I'm going to ask that day in each of my meetings. And I'd say, like, other than that, the routine thing is that I play my co-founder 20 minutes once a week in Super Smash Brothers for the N60.
That's awesome, because that's actually my favorite game back in high school. I used to play with my friends every single day. With that being said, thank you for coming on to this show.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Talking to investors like Adam remind me that the most common denominator for successful startups is often a strong team as well as a compelling vision for the future. And investors who have a good eye for both usually end up being successful, as is the case for Adam. So if you liked what you listened to, please do subscribe and rate us on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, because this helps us get this podcast out to as many people as possible. And if you'd like, you could follow me on Twitter at Mr. Jason Choi to stay up to date as well. With that being said, this has been the Blockcrunch, and I look forward to seeing you at the next episode.
Now back on this track like an animal, so let's go. That work. Why y'all be hating?